Welcome to the AI in Manufacturing podcast here on Industry for Auto TV. I'm your host, Kudzai Manditeresa, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that's shaping the future of manufacturing, which is AI assistance in manufacturing data analytics. And we've got a special guest today to help us unpack this, STEFAN from Renumix. STEFAN, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kuchai, for having me. Really looking forward to talking to you about this.
Awesome. So maybe could you begin by introducing yourself and your company to the audience?
Yeah, sure. My background, or actually my PhD, was in medical engineering. And there, together with some colleagues, we found, or actually we used machine learning to build simulation models of the human body. And after our PhDs, we saw there's a lot of potential in industry to actually use machine learning in product development processes and especially in simulation processes to make them more efficient, streamline it a little bit more. And that was in 2017. So around, I would say, like the first deep learning hype, so to speak. And so we founded Renumix, and since then we've been building systems that use machine learning in the product development process, typically, to essentially help engineers build better products faster. And in the first years, this was more towards, I think, what we now maybe think a little bit of classical machine learning. And increasingly, we see that the new large language models, the assistants, the new technology actually brings a big change about what we can do with the technology. And even more importantly, I mean, how fast and how cheap we can do stuff and help engineers in their daily lives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you just mentioned really AI assistants or really large language models have been kind of like making waves in many industries and starting really to make inroads into manufacturing as well. So, in your view, why do you believe AI assistants are becoming more and more relevant in manufacturing data analytics?
Yeah, I think AI assistants will become ubiquitous. I think for like every white collar worker in like every industry, and they will help us with like all the different things that we have to do in our daily work, finding information from different sources, taking action on certain things, and very specific. And I think we are now already like seeing some areas where this already works really well. Programming, for example, is one area, right? Technical support, customer support, for example, is another one. And I think manufacturing data analytics is like a really, really interesting subject. I think my impression is that we've all learned over the past 10 years that manufacturing data analytics is really hard. And maybe even if we go back 10 years, and we see what basically we all like promised ourselves in terms of what we can do with things like condition monitoring, predictive analytics, and so on and so forth. We all come to learn that like it's maybe a lot harder than we thought. And I think there are a lot of reasons for this, and I think there are two very, very important ones. And one is that it's really difficult to capture the semantics of the data, like, and more concretely building like data catalogs, organize the data in a way that it's useful, right? We were promised data lakes, and we have data swarms. So that's one maybe extreme way to say it. And the other one is that like giving analytics tools, not just to the data experts, right, but to the design engineers, to basically product management, to all the different stakeholders. Like this is another very big problem. And I think with both, with the semantics and with the democratization, I think these are two areas where LLMs can really help, right? And so I think there's a big potential for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also, do you think, like, for example, manufacturing is an industry where there's heavy reliance on domain expertise. You find people who've been working for like 30, 40 years. And do you think that also kind of like plays a role in why AI assistants are becoming more significant in this space?
Yeah, I think it plays a role in the way we should think about AI systems in general, and I think AI assistants really play into that. So, what most we found, I think most people found, is that in many cases it's really difficult to build a system that works completely automatic, right, without human intervention. I mean, poster child probably is autonomous driving, where also we've been promised that it should already be here, and that a lot of progress was being made, but it's difficult, right? And we have this in the manufacturing use cases as well. I mean, take something like condition monitoring, right? What you typically end up is a scenario where you have a system, if it's good, that gives some, okay, maybe here, please look here, you should look here, there might be something odd, right? But there's always the human in the loop, nearly always. And I think this is because what you mentioned, humans have a really big contextual knowledge, the domain knowledge that is needed in many cases to make good decisions or to decide edge cases. And it's really difficult to translate it into a machine. And I think assistants work really well in this context because, I mean, you already hear it from the name, it's not autopilot, it's co-pilot, right? It's assistant. So I think just the concept makes sense that we think in the way that we help the engineers do their job, but there is an interaction here. And I think this is definitely something why it works well in an area where this big domain knowledge is needed. Right? And I think, and the other reason I think is these systems now are really good at capturing at least a little bit of context around a certain subject. So the large language models, the foundation models already know some context, and then you can actually add context for things like retrieval augmented generation from your own manuals, wikis, FAQs, and so on and so forth. So you can actually, at least partially, I would say, like embed this knowledge and this technology, which also helps a lot.
Awesome stuff. So maybe before we really get like deep into the topic, maybe for those for the benefit of those who are listening who may not be as familiar with what AI assistants are, could you explain what AI assistants are, how they actually work, and perhaps describe some technologies behind it?
Yeah, sure. I think probably most people at least opened like ChatGPT once. So I think most people experience, and I think that's the strong power what large language models are, where you have this textual interface, you can ask questions and give answers. And what you can do with that is you can build systems that can help you find information in your local environment, right? Information in your local company network, on your machine, and so on and so forth, and take action. So these systems can also call APIs of different things and can basically help you to do your job. And I think if you wanna paint a picture in your head, I think the famous Jarvis from Iron Man, this assistant that like co-creates something with you as an engineer. I think it's not just like as an image to what assistants can be. It's not wrong. And I think this is super amazing, because I'm completely honest. Like 3 years ago, when somebody told me, yeah, in the future we have things like Jarvis, and I was like, oh, whoa. Machine learning is something completely different. Let's talk about an algorithm for condition monitoring first, not about Jarvis, right? But I think today we can talk about Jarvis, and we actually see a lot of applications where where this already helps. So when we see, okay, in the future, we will have this assistant that can help us basically with every task, right, in the day, we are now finding out more and more tasks where it's already very helpful today. I mentioned some task programming as one, technical support is one, and to do this task well, these pure large language models typically are not enough. Right. One big example is if you go to ChatGPT, it doesn't know anything about your context, about your data, about your documentation, emails, or whatever. So you have to find ways to basically connect this technology to your environment. And one of these very, very important technologies is RAG. I've mentioned it once, retrieval augmented generation, where the general idea is, when you ask a question to the assistant, you first have a mechanism that basically searches all your data very quickly, and then it finds relevant data and then says, okay, please answer the question based on these documents I've just found. So you have the ability to adapt it to your domain. Right. And another one, which is probably a generalization, maybe even, is to have like general agents have the large language model call like arbitrary functionality APIs to enhance like this workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, as you mentioned, that what we thought like unimaginable 3 years right now is really it's something that is seems obvious, and it's just so fascinating the rate at which things are opening. It's as if we're just watching things unfold as you flip the page and open. I a few days back, one of them, I guess, that I had on a podcast recently actually tagged me on a LinkedIn post where he actually created a podcast. I think he used Notebook LLM. I don't know what was used there, but he actually created a podcast session using generative AI, right? And it sounded so realistic, and you'd think that nothing can blow my mind anymore, but each day it's just, you just get something new that says wow. So it's really interesting to see how that is going to unfold, especially in critical use cases like manufacturing, exactly how that would be used. So
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think now where we have this discussion, I think often are we in this hype cycle and everybody is just hyping up AI and it's overrated and so on and so forth. And I think it's a legitimate discussion. We should have it. And I think obviously with every new technology, there's hype and so on and so forth. I'm not like saying that this is totally stupid, but I think one thing you actually should look at is exactly what you mentioned. Just look at the progress that has been made over the last 2 years. And I remember a talk from Jan Seiler from Festo, where he just put out like the image generation capabilities over, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. And even, I mean, as we see these things daily, but just remembering it and just putting it on a slide and seeing like what the progress has been, it's like, I agree. It's mind-blowing, and I'm not saying like the progress will be the same over the next decade. Might slow down a lot, no question. But still, still, even if it slows down a lot, it's incredible. Yeah.
absolutely. And to your point, I mentioned this a few days back to say the real risk here is not overhyping it. The risk is missing out on the impending shift, right? So it's not like really people are overhyping this, but if you miss exactly where this is going, I think this is where there is
Yes, and
potential
I
of really
think
missing out.
absolutely, and I think it's also very difficult to actually judge what, as an organization, I have to do to actually leverage this technology to a maximum degree. And it's not just like about the build or buy. It's we just don't know yet, right? And maybe you've seen this as well. There have been quite a lot of stories around Klarna, this payment provider. It's not our industry, but it's a company that very early and very decisively used AI and AI assistant throughout all your processes, right? And what they found is, okay, if we do this consistently, we have to find ways to store the data differently. We shouldn't use Salesforce anymore. We should use the data in your own databases to control the access, and the workflow is changing. The IT infrastructure is changing. So like a lot of stuff for like at the core like of every organization is changing because of this. And yeah, and I think this really goes to show what you say. It's super important to get on this early and at least understand it, like understand the implications for the organization. Yeah, totally agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I mean, one of the things that you have mentioned, like in your previous presentation, and also when we had a chat offline a few days back, is that you what you found is that users prefer a single AI assistant instead of having multiple core pilots in different tools. Why do you think this kind of integration is so critical?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would word it like that strongly, but I think it's a super important thought. I think now when we look at it, most assistants that are currently built are deeply integrated into a specific application. You might have an assistant in your CAD program. You might have an assistant like in your word processor. You have an assistant in a specific platform. And this assistant, and this is the advantage if you do it this way, has like access through RAG, for example, through agentic architectures in this environment on the current data, can do calls for you, right? So it makes sense. It makes sense to have assistants that are tightly integrated into a certain environment. And if in your daily work you are spending a significant amount of time in just this environment, then a deep integration totally makes sense. I mean, another example would be the Cursor IDE for programmers, right? This totally makes sense. But I'm very sure that what you also want is you want an assistant that has like access not just over the localized context, for example, the program or the application I'm currently programming on, or the CAD model that I'm currently designing, but that has access to like a broader context of your organization, of your work, of your life. And then what you want to do is you want to have something that like sits on top of all the little applications that you use, right? That connects the data, but also calls into these different things and helps you this way. And I think the latter type of assistant is what we will primarily use, and it's much harder to build because you have to find a way to interconnect like all the data, all the tools and everything. And everybody like should, I think, if you're an organization, you should be thinking about, as in the Klarna example I mentioned, you should be thinking about how can we build our data infrastructure in such a way that we can make these connections, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if I kind of like understand you correctly, is basically what you're saying is that sure, organizations are still going to need dedicated AI assistants for specific functions. So maybe it might be checking quality. Another one could be for predictive maintenance. But you need one orchestrator, that AI assistant that is able to kind of like coordinate, you know, between all these different specific AI assistants. Uh, and is in that case, what sort of like interface of, I mean, this would likely be natural language interface between the different AI assistants. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think on the one hand, you have to have good interfaces for your data. What's the data? What's like the data lakehouse, or what's like the graph database, whatever, wherever you have your data, we can like easily access it. But in the way what you said, and I think it totally makes sense to think in this way, so you have this one orchestrator and you have the different assistants that are orchestrated. I don't know, but I can give you an example. A lot of people or a lot of organizations are currently like working on technical support systems. It's typically used in a first step internally. So you have this internal technical support team, and they can ask the assistant certain questions, find the relevant information faster, can get back to the customers faster. But in a second step, this will be available for customers directly. So if you want to know how to set up a measurement equipment or how to do something in a certain software, you go to this assistant, you ask the question, right? But I think this is the step that's happening right now. But I think the next step is, as an engineer, do I really want to always go to the web page of a certain manufacturer or log into a certain portal to access this manual? Maybe not. Maybe I want to have this general assistant. I can ask them, hey, how can I do this with this measurement equipment? And this then goes back to a certain API, ask this assistant, comes back to me. So I think it's a good example on something where it's pretty clear that you want to have something on top. And maybe it's just a simple API call. You just go and just patch the question through. Maybe it's going to be more difficult. We will see. We will see. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, super. Yeah, that will be certainly interesting to see how that really pans out. I imagine there's going to be a lot of collaborative sort of like standardizations, as it were, in that space. We'll see how that goes. But in any case, it really seems like, I mean, just like in any software or any system, like interface and usability of AI assistants are going to play a huge role in whether they are adopted in successfully in manufacturing or not, right? So from your experience, how important is the user interface for assistants in really driving adoption in manufacturing?
Yeah, I think for us, it's like a super important topic, maybe even like the number one topic. And it's actually something we learned quite some time ago, that if you have a machine learning system, that you typically have, as I mentioned previously, a human in the loop. And that means you have to make this interaction with the human really good. And I give you an example from, like, I would say, like the classical ML machine learning solutions. So we've done a lot of work in machine learning based acoustics, because machine learning now can capture and classify different noises much better than classical method, and it's useful in testing or in manufacturing and end-of-line testing, for example. And obviously, what you always want to have is a model that's highly reliable, right? But in practice, when you have the choice between like getting more data to build an even better model, or like building a better interface so the user can actually interact with the results and can quickly sort out false positives, for example, it's typically a much better way, a much cheaper way, much more efficient way to build the better system overall. And a big part of this is the user interface and how you build this. For example, how you build in explainability technology is really what like make the users trust the system and drive user adoption. As you mentioned, it's probably like true like for any piece of software, but in this specific context with machine learning, I think this trust factor, right? This is especially important, and that's why it's so important. And now with the assistant, with the RAG systems, for example, we actually see the very same, right? Especially in RAG, you typically have like two phases. The first phase is you look for sources, and then the model actually just summarizes the sources and gives an answer. And as a human, what you nearly always want to have is the ability to check the sources quickly. And that's super important, especially as we are this assistant world, not talking about systems that are like 99% correct, right? They can be incomplete, as a human would be maybe too, right? But there can also be all sorts of errors. But if I'm able to actually just get the answer, click on the source, and immediately pop my result. Okay, here's your PDF. It's on page 350. I highlighted the answer for you, and you can briefly check, oh, that's all right. Or it's not, right? Then you can have a useful system, even if your model makes mistakes. And having this interaction and really nailing it down is so important, because imagine what instead, if you just a minor tweak, if the system says, okay, it's in manual 53, here's the link, and you have to click the link. It takes a few seconds, it opens. You have to scroll down to a certain page. You have to read it. So you spend like, I would say, 20 seconds, 25 seconds to do this, right? Or you have an UI where you just click, and in 1 second, you have exactly what you're looking for. It makes a huge difference in practice. It makes a much bigger difference than, should I use GPT-4o, or should I use something from Anthropic or Mistral or whatever? This is at least what we experienced.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with the importance of trust, because I mean I've worked with manufacturers really on the front lines, and it doesn't matter how sophisticated your software is or system is. If it just makes one mistake, if it gives the wrong information just once, no one is ever going to look at it again. I've witnessed that several times, so it's really important that the system is trustworthy, particularly in manufacturing, because there's a lot at stake there's a lot at stake.
Yeah. Yes, and if it makes mistakes, then it's important to actually, for engineers, and I relate to that 100%, to actually like look very closely at these examples. Why is it making the mistake here? And you as a user would actually like to take a deep look at that and to understand it for yourself, right? It's very different if you say, okay, it's 95% correct, and some typical failure modes are, okay, that's good, and you need that as well, but you like this ability to actually like see for yourself. I think I agree. That's so important, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because also there is I mean, I would say accountability is also a big issue there. Because again, using the example that I've just mentioned, so kind of like when I was working as an industrial system integrators, where you'd build an HMI or SCADA system, because the operator doesn't want to make a mistake. It takes them time to really move from doing things manually to using your HMI, because they don't trust that they don't trust that if they use it, it will execute it to how they want, and they don't want to be accountable for messing up a batch or things like that. So accountability is a big part of it, and I wonder how that accountability factor is going to really come in when with the AI assistance in place.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think that's a big issue, and I think right now, like having the possibility to check sources is actually the one thing I think that we currently have to do this, and maybe give another example from more like from data analysis. If I just ask a system, how many times did an error occur in my system, and it just answers 42, then I have just one answer. I have no possibility, is this really true? But if I say, okay, please show me where errors would happen, and I get a list of 42 things, and it says, okay, it's 42, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and I can check it, then I think it's much more useful, at least right now, right? And yeah, have much more of this accountability. So this is definitely the way in how we should think about like the current tasks we tackle with the system. Yeah.
And then just to kind of like linger on that a bit more, just to get a sense, do you think we'll get, or maybe how soon we'll get to a point where we now trust assistants so much that we don't even need to check the source of their information? Do you think it will get good enough where it doesn't really tell you, oh, I got this from manual, or this, where you just kind of like check whatever it says to you the first time? How soon do you think we'll get to that point, or it's hard to tell at this stage?
Yeah, I think the answer is I don't know. And I think, just to say a personal anecdote, then I think it's also like strange how your mind can change quickly. So you trust these systems maybe even too much. So in my case, I actually have like very little front-end development skills. And so I wanted, like, also as an experiment, look a little bit how can I teach myself React development with Assistant and with ChatGPT and so on and so forth. And I looked a little bit at what might be the best way to go about it. And in this process, I asked it a lot of questions, and please explain me this, please explain me that. And in this context, like web development, it works really well. There's like so much training data, and I was really impressed most of the time. And then when I got an error, I found myself just typing in, please help me, like this, right? So I had this error, what should I do? So I have like this, I developed this trust because it's explained me like this concepts really well. And understood. I used it more and more, like even for stuff where I would say, like, as an engineer, can be dangerous to ask something, just like a new errors popping up, asking such a system, please, and I know, please help me. It's probably not how I would tell like any customers that's a good use case, but just my mind, I trusted it more and more, and so so used it more and more. And we'll see. I think that that actually might happen, but obviously, like in a especially manufacturing context, it's super important that we put the rail guards in place, that we are only asking questions that like should be asked to such a system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, the other issue that I want to really talk to you about is the challenge that we kind of like have in with the traditional industrial data architecture, which might be limiting, which actually has been limiting as far as manufacturing data analytics is concerned. So I would like to get your perspective on this issue. Could you kind of like break down for us on what the challenges are with the existing industrial data infrastructure? How does it impact manufacturing data analytics, and what are the solutions here with AI assistance?
Yeah, sure. I think probably like I should start a little bit with a disclaimer, in the sense that like we have a lot of expertise in building machine learning based systems, where and like building up this data infrastructure expertise has I think like come over time as a more be like a byproduct, right? And with this assistant technology, we really see that it's more and more important. And from my perspective, what has been happening, there was a lot of investment everywhere. I mean, I think I mentioned in the beginning, we're doing a lot of work in automotive as well, and it's the same story. So there was a lot of investment in data infrastructure, getting data from machines, putting it into data lake houses, storing all the data. And this is probably something that's not like some companies, some organizations are already there. They already have that. There's still a lot of companies that don't even have that, right? But what many people found is that now I have all this data. I have it on, say, a cloud data lakehouse, but I don't use it. It's just, and it's actually quite expensive. And you actually, okay, now should we actually store all these things? And now we invested so much, and what's our return? I think that's a feeling many people have. And I think one problem is that you have to describe the data in a way that it's useful. So if you have a machine and you get back different signals, you have to know what these signals are and have to describe it somewhere, and that's a lot of work. And like building up these data catalogs is something, if you just do it, hey, in the first step I should describe all my data, then again you have to invest something without getting something back, and maybe you try to do a good description without knowing the use case, which is also bad. So what happened is that many organizations actually like neglected building data catalogs because that's not, it doesn't work, right? So and this, I think, severely limits the possibilities of using the current data. Right? And the next thing is that what's super difficult is to actually access the data. So the state of the art is I have to build typically a custom data pipeline because I have to do some pre-processing, cleaning, and so on and so forth. And then maybe I build a dashboard for colleagues. That makes sense for all the processes where at the end I have a dashboard and that's static and that's useful and I can look at it every day. Makes super sense and a lot of good use cases for it, but it doesn't make sense for many other use cases. For example, where as a product manager, I would like to know how much a certain functionality of a machine is even used or stuff like this, right? It can't be addressed with the current technology.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so fascinating, the way that AI assistants really allow you to sort of like make sense of data or get value out of the data. Like as you mentioned, we are used to this way of interfacing with data, whereby someone builds a dashboard for you, and the metrics that they present to you are what they think you need, right?
Yes.
And yeah, please go on.
No. So absolutely, I think it has always been. I mean, a whole data science, data analytics. I mean, the challenge is you have to get the domain experts or whatever business experts and the data experts together. As you said, you have to drive this exchange and this notion of like the citizen data scientist, right? It's also not something new, but it's something what well, it's pretty clear that you have to do it. Otherwise, exactly as you mentioned, right? Otherwise, like data experts will build KPIs or visualizations that nobody really needs, and to get this right is incredibly difficult. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, using the natural language interface then kind of like means that one would actually describe the kind of like dashboard they want to see for that specific moment, and then next day they might want to see a different dashboard. So it really kind of like allows you to create ad hoc dashboard as and when you want to find information, and that's kind of like really a really powerful way of working with data in my view. So it's interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if you put it down very concretely, like what are the functions that are performed, I think definitely one is like the natural language query. So you can ask a question, and one thing you essentially do is you translate it into the SQL database query. So it's basically, I would say, like programs a little bit for you, right? And this is something that actually, even with like open source model, works incredibly well today. And this is one aspect. The next aspect is what you if you want to do it manually, say in a Jupyter notebook or something, for example, you have to program a little visualization, just a few lines of code, but you have to know how to do it. So that's the next thing. Again, please put up this visualization, and it puts it up. That's another like little function in this system that enables it. And the last another very important, I think, a technical part is that it can actually like contextualize this data. So I give you an example from automotive. When you have testing data, you have like all these columns, and often these columns, the names of the columns, like it's very hard to like enforce an ontology on the name. So the one person would say like it's voltage, the next time they say it's voltage 1, the next one. So it's like, it's the same thing, but it's like named differently. It's only one failure mode, right? But and with natural with these LLMs, they can, as a human, as you can do it, the human can actually like map this very quickly without any rewards. Works really well. And the technology can like also use other documents to do this. For example, if you actually have some documentation on your car or in manufacturing on your machine where you've written down what the signals are, and then the LLM can read it, right? And can answer the question depending on what's in the document and what's in the data. And this is super helpful.
Awesome. I mean, one other thing that I want to get your assistance on, or your take on, really is like we know LLMs are kind of like really good at making sense, as you mentioned, of unstructured data, as it were. So how much of data engineering for transforming and contextualizing the data do you think is still useful? How much of it do you think is still useful in that? How much more significant is data engineering, maybe to put it simply, as far as AI use case addressing is concerned?
So I think if I answered, or maybe I'll start a little bit how I think how it's going today. So today in data engineering, what we have to do is we have to build some like transformation pipelines on the data, and there are teams that actually have built up like their own internal libraries that do some feature transformation or extract relevant KPIs and so on and so forth. I think that's one thing you have to do. And the other one, I've been talking about that a lot, is like building these data catalogs, semantic description of the data, or exporting it into like a data warehouse where it's like very structured and so on and so forth. And today, I would say the first big step is to take, for example, these libraries, these transformation libraries, and use these as tools in an agentic system. So we don't say, hey, large language model, do the whole processing pipeline by your own, but we rather say, okay, we have this function, maybe we even have like certain standardized pipelines that we have already built manually, and you can call them on new data, or you can call them when somebody needs this functionality to answer their questions. And in data catalogs, I think it's very similar. If you already have a good data catalog, it really helps the large language model, because then you have all this context in your data and you are able to answer the question correctly. So in one line of thought, it's a prerequisite. But on the other hand, I think you also have this feedback. So when you find your data catalog is not up to par, in the interaction with the assistant, you can actually like very quickly update it. And I think will be true for this ETL pipelines and all the data engineering, that this assistant helps you to connect functions to a pipeline or write a new function better. So it goes both ways, I think. But I would also say that right now, my view is that you still have manual intervention. You still have a library of Python function, for example, that a team maintains, even if an AI like helps write the code, test the code, whatever. That's, I think, not going away.
Awesome. Great stuff. So I want to shift our focus to Renumix for a moment. So your company is unique vision when it comes to AI in manufacturing. You mentioned that you've really got some experience in test data in automotive. Could you kind of like really walk us through Renumix visions for AI assistance in helping manufacturing experts, maybe some tools or product offerings that you have at your company?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, like since founding Renumix, we've always been like concentrating a lot on processes in product development and manufacturing, and we've always been very focused on the human in the loop part and helping engineers to actually like understand these black box algorithms. And we, for example, we have an open source project called Renumix Spotlight, which is basically like a visualization tool that helps you curate data sets to train algorithms basically that you can trust. And over the past 18 months, we've been doing a lot of work in this context of assistance, especially like first we started off with the assistant that work on documents, and then we extended this to working on assistants that actually help with data analytics and understanding data. And when we talk to teams, as from automotive, where we have our main focus, but also in manufacturing, we've like heard the same story basically every time. As I mentioned, I want to democratize it. How can I add the semantics and so on and so forth? And we also experienced like the pain that comes with building these assistant systems ourselves. So especially on the UI part, because we talked about it, how important that is. And in documents, you can do it, I would say, like maybe with a few weeks or so of development efforts. But in the data analysis part, it's much more difficult. And what we are doing right now is like helping customers set up their assistants for technical support, for example, or for their data analysis needs. And what we are moving towards is like using our open source expertise to actually help build UI toolkits that really help like not just us, but also like other teams to build these assistants.
Yeah. So maybe to kind of like really focus on Spotlight, your sort of like open source toolkit. One thing that I want to find out is why do you believe it's important for data analytics toolkit like Spotlight to be open source?
Yeah.
Why open source?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first of all, maybe I should, when we talk about it a little bit, tell a little bit more what Spotlight is.
Yes, please.
Spotlight
Yes.
is not like a general purpose data analytics tool, like a replacement for BI system or something like this. Spotlight is geared towards like data teams to actually inspect samples from in a data set that you want to train data on and to understand results from machine learning models. So it's a data curation software. And we've launched it open source because we love open source. We use a lot of open source, but also we see that with open source, you can actually like, you can spread your ideas and your products a lot quicker. You get a much quicker adoption. For example, we did a collaboration with Hugging Face, which was awesome to connect the Hugging Face models to Spotlight. And this gave the tool a huge boost. And yeah, it's pretty cool, like to see how people use it and how people like build on top of it. And this was actually one of the many learnings we had, that like the Spotlight is like most of the people who use it like most successfully actually try to, I would say try, but to integrate Spotlight into like their own stack. they are building a pipeline, an application, a framework, and they're integrating it. And with assistance, and this goes back to like the very first points we discussed, I think it will be the same. These assistant technology will be integrated into certain platforms, but also has to have the ability like to have this unified view over different data sources, over different tools, and so on and so forth. So in order to facilitate great UIs for assistants, you have to build something that has like high adoption, is very compatible, is very open. And I think the only really way to do it is to building open source software.
Awesome. So, I mean, I kind of like realized that there's so much more, potential for manufacturing data analytics use cases. But do you perhaps have any use cases where you think AI assistants will have the most impact in manufacturing? Perhaps you've got a real world example to share.
Yeah, sure. I think in when you see what we are doing, but also what others doing, it's pretty clear that there are some front runners. I think one very important part is just programming. That's not something we do, other people do, but I think it's pretty clear everybody and that do some kind of programming in manufacturing. This might involve like PLC programming, like there are several companies, including Siemens, like building for this. I think it's super good use case. Another use case that we actually like building a lot is technical support. It's something that we always recommend, like especially mid-sized organization to implement in a first step. And this is an amazing use case. There's a lot of value here. You have first of all, you typically have like a good data foundation. On that, you have manuals, you have FAQs, wikis. There's typically like already something there that you can start. And then you can actually have a real benefit from the system. It's not just, hey, here you have this Copilot 365, look what use cases you can find and maybe use it once a week. But you actually have people that have these questions basically like every day, and the system gets used, and you learn like what you can do to improve the system. For example, don't export your manuals in PDF, but rather use a markdown structured format. One of the little learnings, right? Yes. To improve the answers. And it's also something that other people within the organization can try and can experience the power of this assistant to understand how does it work, like in my specific domain. So customer support is definitely, I think, a big use case, and there we are currently at the stage where it's deployed internally. Our customers, but other teams we speak with, I think, will very, very briefly go towards also making this available externally. I think this will be the next big step. I think this will come with like a lot of challenges. Some of them are easy to solve, some of them are not that easy to solve. And I think that's probably another very big use case. And the next use case is this data analytics use case. And I think many people are actually doing already, like using ChatGPT a lot for just programming Jupyter notebooks, right? And then this is their way of like an AI assistant for data analytics. This is how it's used a lot today. But there will be a lot more dedicated systems that allow you to drag and drop your visualizations to have just a much higher usability. And yeah, we've just started to build these systems together with customers. And I expect that from these, like we have the specific system for the specific customer, there will be a lot of standardization towards next year in 2025, generally for engineering data analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. That is fascinating. So I saw, like, just going through your presentation, I saw one video clip where you kind of like really just describing what you want to see and then dragging it from the side panel into a visualizer, and then you can open the trends. It's really fascinating how you can really just, use uh, this AI assistant to be able to dig the kind of information that you need. Can you speak to us more about that specific platform? What platform was that?
Yeah, sure. So this what then the video that you've probably seen is a actually a little older demonstration. We built it I think in the beginning of the year. So this was like our first how should it look like in the future, and the idea is to just to give a paint a picture for the listeners is you can actually ask questions like in the automotive context, please show me all signals relevant for battery health. And then out of thousands of signals, you get the relevant ones, you can drag and drop them, you can, and that a lot of people actually telling us that's so important is you can zoom in, zoom out of your time series very well, much better than, for example, you can do with stuff like Power BI or Grafana or so. And then you can ask other questions. Please show me all anomalies in the voltage channel, for example, or in a certain period of time. And the assistant runs the tools for you, comes back to you with events, and you can drag and drop basically results, can share the dashboard and so on and so forth. So I think this will really be the future, how engineers will interact with data. And and right now we are building the systems, these systems specifically for customers. And I'm really looking forward to share with you and the world that maybe like the new videos that are more advanced, and what we are very much interested. So if somebody from the listeners is interested as well, to explore partnerships, how we can integrate this technology into already existing platforms for manufacturing data analytics, testing data analytics. This is something I think that will be like top of our list in 2025, to package the technology in such a way that you can easily integrate it into applications and platforms that are already available.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we quickly running out of time here. So, just want to give you the opportunity to touch on anything that we may have left out here, anything of importance that you wanna our audience to know about Renumix or the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it a lot. I think we covered all the important aspects. And as I said, I think if in the audience somebody who's interested in building assistance, both for like document analysis, but also for data analytics, please reach out. We're always interested in exchanging ideas about that, experiences about that, especially with teams that already have some experience. And very, very specifically, we will launch a first open source toolkit for a UI for documents that will feature all the nice to have features that we found in our projects, the source highlighting from documents like PDF, an easy way of giving feedback, a good document list, and so on and so forth. And if somebody is interested in like exchanging ideas on that, or would like to be one of the first users, please reach out. Very happy to talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We will provide links to all the GitHub repos and Renumix website, and also some social media handles for Stefan, and any future work that they may pull out. We're also going to link this in the description for in case of people are going to watch this video at a later stage. So again, thank you so much, Stefan, for joining us today. It was such a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me. Had a great time. Thank you.